it's been a while, but we are back with another project breakdown where we're going to be talking about some cinematography and lighting techniques. Now, if you haven't seen the full video, it's going to be linked in the description. Please go watch it. It's kind of one of my favorite videos that we did last year, and it was a video that we did not expect to happen because it was so on the fly. Looking at this project from a whole, it was originally intended to be a photo only project, but we wanted to elevate it and bring it to a whole campaign level. Going into this video, we knew that the photo aspect of the project was primary and then the video came secondary. So that brought a whole aspect of challenges in terms of lighting the space both for photo and video at the same time. With that being said, we only wanted a setup that we had to change the levels of the lights, not necessarily the positions. Now, I don't have the proper terminology in terms of describing projects in terms of a look, but we were going for something that was high key with a studio vibe, if that makes sense. The cameras that we shot this on were the Red Komodo, the Sony FX9, and also a Sony Handycam that we used to kind of throw in there to mix up the edit. The lenses that we shot this on were the DZO Vespid Primes in combination with some Nikon vintage lenses. When generally looking at this video and breaking it down, you only technically have one scene and one direction we can shoot in, and this really makes it difficult to make a video this long. That means this video highly relies on the edit and then also getting coverage on the day of the shoot. And what I mean by coverage is a variety of angles, shooting techniques, and also mixed media. That's why we bought the Handycam. And then just covering all your bases in terms of what you can option in and out of the edit. The look that we were going for was high contrast, but also super soft. And the way that you achieve that is using massive sources. In this case, we used a 12x12 frame. And on that frame, we only had one stop of diffusion, which was an artificial silk, and then also had a grid on that, so we cut the spill of the light spreading across all the room. The lights we used were two 1200Ds, and you're gonna be like, whoa. Why did you use two 1200Ds? Those lights are massive, and that's something that I regularly wouldn't use. But again, we ran into the original problem that we needed to light this for photo and video at the same time, and we needed to adjust levels. And realistically, when we were actually shooting, the 1200Ds were at maybe 40%, and only a small beam of light was hitting the subject because we used black cutters to actually cut half of the source because we didn't want any of the light spilling on the background. But when we were shooting photo, we needed 100% of that power because generally with photo, you need a lot of light. Now, the big question everybody is asking is how exactly did we light this and how did we achieve this look? I'm going to be looking at the widest frame and kind of like the hero frame that I like to look at. So this is like basically the nicest frame that I personally like for the piece, and this is where we're going to start building up our lighting. So how we achieve this is we had a massive 12x12 frame, and then this had one sheet of artificial silk as well as a grid. And what that grid does is it basically stops all the light spilling from all over the room, because if you hit a silk or any diffusion material, it spreads the light so heavily, so you need something to cut all that light going just directly at your talent or what you're pointing at. To make this easier, this is a top-down view of our light source, and we use two 1200Ds. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, that's crazy, why would you need that amount of light? In a regular situation for video, you wouldn't, but that's the amount of light we needed to use for photo and video. So that is going through our 12x12 frame and then going through a grid as well, and that is our main key source. When you're hitting a 12x12 source, it basically took up half the room, and we were spilling all over the room, and we needed to cut this light even more. So luckily in the studio there were these things called V-flats, and when you're looking at this image, and a V-flat is actually in frame, and this is just a big piece of cardboard that's painted black. So any negs, I'm just going to draw it in gray. So we had a V-flat here, so that cuts all the light getting onto the back of the room, which would bounce back on our subject. And then we also had a V-flat here. So this kind of creates a giant softbox that would put on any light. And then we actually cut some of the light with another V-flat right here and then right here. And this allowed us to just mainly project the light on our talent rather than spilling all on the backdrop. So it was lighting the backdrop and lighting the talent, but not necessarily spilling all over the room. Now that was our main key light, but we also wanted to add a lot of contrast, and you can see that heavily contrasted area on this side of the frame. And then we just used two sets of V-flats, so this is considered maybe like a 8x8 just black. And this was just on the right side in relation to camera. And then this gave us all that negative fill and added a lot of shape to the image and a lot of shape to the face. For our hair light, we used a Forza 60B with a Light Dome 2 modifier. So this is just a small softbox, and this is boomed out over the talent. And what this is doing is adding some texture and some kind of salt and pepper to the shadow side of each of the subjects. So you can see it on his hair right there, a small streak on her hair, and then just because he's wearing so much black, you kind of see it on his hat, but not so much on this subject on the right. We knew we were missing something in terms of the general levels. It felt a little too contrasty at this point when we're just looking at these two lights. So what we added was a Forza 500 with a normal Fresnel on it. So the stock kind of thing that you get in the case. And this was blasted straight up at the ceiling. Luckily, the ceilings were white. So what this did is just kind of add a little levels to the room, as well as a little more light on the right side of the image, because we thought it was a little bit too contrasty. So this is the kind of the secondary hero image that I'm going to be looking at, and then I'm just going to be describing all the effects of all these lights. So with the big source that you can see the massive catch light in each person's eyes, we're just going to focus on this main talent here. Now, and the gradient across, especially on his face and her face, is super pleasing. And then also on his face, you get more of this Rembrandt light, and then on her face, you get a tiny bit of it. And then the gradient goes across the clothes as well, and especially with his too, and adds a lot of texture to the jacket. One thing that we found that we can't light everybody in the scene, because technically you would have to have another light source or something overhead to light this person on the right. And it was just something that we kind of had to roll with, is that she's physically blocking all the light from him, and then we can't add another light in this case, and it was just something that we had to deal with. And then if you look at the background is nicely evenly lit, and then has this kind of sort of vignette if you go all the way around. And there's no really spots on the background where you're looking like, oh, that's off-putting or anything like that. You're immediately drawn to the center of the frame, and you're looking at the talent, and you're not really looking at anything else. You can see some of that V-flat that we used for some contrast. You can see that they're sitting there back pretty far. And then again, our light source is on the left. That was the lighting setup for this, and this is something I'm going to rely on when shooting certain fashion pieces like this. A massive source, a bunch of black material that I can cut light and also shape the light on the talent, a small hair light, and then something just for room tone, which was the Forza. Because if we didn't have that light shooting up to the ceiling, it would be very off-putting in terms of how much contrast there was. And this just goes back to what you want to do as a DP in terms of the feeling and the mood that you want to push with the image, and obviously with the consideration of the director and the client in terms of what look is agreed upon. But this was something that we experimented with, and we love the output of this. If you guys want to see more content where we look at the videos that we created on a commercial standpoint and break them down in terms of cinematography, lighting, or just as a project basis, please let us know in the comments below, because we love making these videos. And as always, subscribe and like for more, and I'll see you on the next one.